So these are the bones of the skull. We have the frontal bone here, which is right where your forehead is. We have the temporal bones on the side here, right where your temple would be. There are two of those here and here. And you have your parietal bones, which are at the top and to the sides of your head. There are also two of those. They are separated by a suture. Next, we have the occipital bone, which is at the base of your skull. So it is separated by this suture here. Everything that is here is the occipital bone. Next, we have the zygomatic bone, which is here and here. We have nasal bones right here and right here. They are separated by a suture, so there are two of them. We have the lacrimal bone, which is here. When you hear the word lacrimal, it almost sounds like there's a cry in the middle, so lacrimal, and that is right where your tear ducts would be. So that's where your lacrimal glands are. Next, we have the ethmoid bone, which is here. It kind of makes like a trapezoid shape here. It goes all the way down, and you can see more parts of the ethmoid bone, such as this perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone. And you can also see it when you look into the orbit here. So the ethmoid bone is right here. So it's beyond, it's beyond the lacrimal bone. So right here is the ethmoid bone and ethmoid bone. Next we have the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone kind of looks like a butterfly if you were to take it out. So you follow the suture here and all the way down, and then the bottom of the bottom butterfly wing kind of goes down into the bottom there. So again, the top wing, and then the bottom wings can be seen if you turn the skull over. So these are the pterygoid processes of the sphenoid bone. I don't think we have to know those. Next we have the maxilla. So it's that bone that's right there at your upper lip. Then we have the mandible, not mandibular, it's mandible bone. And it's got all of these nice little processes. Oh, we also have the vomer, which can be seen the best if you turn the skull over. You might be tempted to think it's the nasal conchae, or I'm sorry, the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid, but right where that perpendicular plate of the ethmoid would be. Next, we're going to have the palatine bone. So that is going to be right here. And if you look real close, oh, I'm blocking. If you look real close, you see a suture here. In a minute, we're going to go over this area here, which is part of the maxilla bone. So it's in the process of getting to the palatine bone, and so this is going to be the palatine process of the maxillary or maxilla bone. Okay, now these are the sutures of the skull. You have the coronal suture here, and coronal means like crown. It literally just translates to crown, so the scientist who named it thought that that kind of looks like a crown. You have the squamous suture, which is here, and if you look at it, doesn't it kind of look like a squamous cell, all flat and squished? So it's here. That is actually part of the sphenoid bone, but the suture, the squamous suture is there. Then we have the lambdoid suture, which is right here. And lambdoid looks like an upside down Y. So this right here, not this, this is a different suture, but right here is your lambda. Then you have the sagittal suture, which goes down and makes left and right halves here. And those are the sutures of the skull. Okay, and so the holes of the skull, we're going to start with the orbit, which is the entire eye hole here. We are going to use 2 models because some are better than others. Within the orbit, you have an optic foramen. So it's the nice circular hole that's there in the back of the orbit. You also have the superior and inferior orbital fissures. So a way to remember that is that if you kind of look at it just right, it almost looks like a lake of some sort. And if you're going to a lake, you might have some fishermen, and so there would be fissures there. So orbital fissure, superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure, and of course it's in the other 2, superior orbital fissure, inferior orbital fissure. Then you have your external auditory meatus. So that is basically right where your ear hole is. So meatus means a tube. And external on the outside, auditory for hearing, and the meatus for tube. So external auditory meatus. Then you have your olfactory foramina. So if it were one hole, it would be, if I were talking about just one hole, I would say foramen, but it's multiple, so I'm saying foramina, and that is in the cribriform plate. This model makes it look as if the holes are in a straight line. That's not accurate. Then we have the, oh, that's not a good one either. Wow. The carotid foramen, it's almost in a place that makes it look as if like you have to go through some rotted area to get to it. So it looks like it's rotted away. You can kind of see it, but it doesn't really show it very well. So we'll skip past that. Next, these holes are known as the Ross line by a lot of nursing students. So if I'm looking at the skull and I turn his face to where if he had eyes, he would be looking the same direction that I am looking. So this is the base of his head, or I'm sorry, the back of his head and the front of his head. So you have what is called a Ross line, ROS. So rotundum, ovale, and spinosum. So that is the foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, and it kind of looks like an oval, and then foramen spinosum. Now this one, I'm not sure if you guys have to know it, but if you have a Turkish saddle, you might have a Turkish cowboy. And that Turkish cowboy might lasso, so like lace rum, or he might drink rum, either way. But if he does, he's gonna keep it right next to him. So you have foramen lacerum, and then carotid foramen would be pretty close to that, but down in like a rotted out looking area. Next you have your jugular foramen. You can see this, of course, from two different ways. So it is, I don't know if you can, it is just kind of above that hole where the spine would go through. You can see it best if you turn it this way. So actually, so I'm gonna put the stick through there, and I'm gonna turn it upside down. And where does it look like that is pointing to? So the other is right here. So there's two of those. It almost looks like it's pointing to your neck. And sometimes you'll think jugular. So it's the jugular foramen. And then you have the foramen magnum, and magnum means very large. So magnum, and of course you can see it from the bottom, foramen magnum. The last hole is the hypoglossal canal. So hypoglossal canal, hypo means below or under, and glossal means the tongue. So I don't know why they thought that that was like under the tongue, but what I think of is these glossy condyles. And I think it's under the glossy condyles. So occipital, or I'm sorry, those are occipital condyles. So, hypoglossal canal. And those are the holes of the skull. Okay, now we're gonna go over the fetal skull. And so the fetal skull has fontanelles, sutures, and cranial bones as well. To start, we're gonna do the fontanelles. So the fontanelles are kind of like almost holes, but they're not quite holes. There is tissue there. There is the anterior fontanelle, which is right here at the very tip. There is the sphenoidal fontanelle, which is here. There is the mastoid fontanelle, which is right by that mast, mastoid bone. Then there is the occipital fontanelle, which is at the very back of the head. Next, we have the sutures. So we have the coronal suture, just like we see in adults. We have the squamous suture, same as in adults, right here. Makes it kind of look like a squamous cell, a flat squamous cell. Then we have the sagittal suture, which divides into left and right halves of the body, so right down the middle. And we are now going to do our cranial bones. So in a fetus, you're going to have two frontal bones. So these are still frontal bones, but there are two of them. They fuse together and become one. Then you also have your parietal bones, which are the same as the grown-up, off to the side here. Next, we have the occipital bone at the very back and base of the head. So also separated by something that looks like a lambda, like we saw in the adult skull. Then we have our temporal bone, which is right here. So it's right there at the temple. And then we also still have the sphenoid bone. You can't really see it very well, but it would be, parts of it would be here and here, and then parts of it are here where the pterygoid processes are. And that is all you need to know for the fetal skull.